bring in former Buckeye and a former first-round pick, Bobby Carpenter. Bobby, let's start with Marshawn Lattimore, going to the New Orleans Saints, a team that always needs defense. How do you think he performs at the next level?
Well, I think what they're trying to do there in New Orleans, they do a great job. They want to pressure, bring a lot of heat, play man-to-man on the outside, and that's what Marshawn Lattimore is terrific at. He's big, he's physical, he's got long arms, he can play press coverage. They're going to love that. Sean Payton is going to upgrade this defense. You know about the offense in Drew Brees, but this is what's going to make him really tick, I think, this year for the New Orleans Saints.
Malik Hooker slid a little. Some people worried about his shoulder. Bobby, I think the Colts got a steal, though, at 15. What do you make of the Hooker selection? I
like the Hooker selection. I know there's a lot of people in Cleveland upset that he's sitting there. They trade back. They don't end up taking him. They'll say it's Chuck Pagano coached Ed Reed in college and said that this is the closest thing he has seen to Ed Reed.
That's good.
Since he was there. So I'm not saying that those expectations will be met, but you have to look at the guy's playmaking ability. But I do think the injuries are what hurt him a little bit. I think he'll be fine. But teams, when they're drafting a guy that high at a safety position, granted he is a playmaker, they want to make sure that they have a known quantity. He's had some missed tackles. He's has some issues, but I think he'll be a big impact player for Indianapolis.
See, I don't understand health when it comes to this, because if you're looking at a player that you want to have a 6 to 10 year career, why do you freak out that he's going to miss the first OTA? Why is that such a big deal?
Well, I think it's more the fact that you're not worried just about the first OTA. As you see these guys come in, and sometimes these injuries linger a bit. They linger far more than they should, and when that happens, then you're worried, okay, it shoot into first half of the year, and maybe by year 4 or 5 he has something congenital that starts to erode, and then he's not the player that you hoped he would be.
Okay, makes sense. Gareon Conley had a very up and down draft week for a variety of reasons. What are your thoughts on Conley going to the Raiders in the late first round?
Well, I think Oakland thoroughly vetted this situation, and if anyone was going to take him, they were going to feel very comfortable with exactly what they knew about the situation that happened in Cleveland. I don't think he goes in the first round unless the team that picked him was about 95 to 99% sure that he was going to be exonerated, and these charges there wouldn't even be charges filed, let alone any type of conviction. Gareon Conley could end up being one of the steals of the draft with his physical ability, because like Marshawn Lattimore, he's a physical guy. He can run, he has length, he has great ball skills. And Oakland's a team that wants to win now, and they had one of the worst pass secondaries in the NFL. This should be a nice, needed upgrade.
And when you played at Ohio State, it was always this linebacker university. Now defensive backs. What's happened here in the last 5 or 6 years to change that a little bit?
They always called it linebacker U, and that's something historically that I always loved.
Yeah.
But if you go back and look, Antoine Winfield, Sean Springs,
that's true.
Derrick Ross,
top 5 guys.
Nate Clements, Dante Whitner. They start rolling Malcolm Jenkins, and Ohio State in the last 20 years has cranked out a lot of defensive backs, play a lot of tough man, and guys that can make plays with the ball in their hand once they get an interception.
Curtis Samuel going to an interesting spot. Carolina Panthers took both Christian McCaffrey and Samuel, 2 guys who you might list at running back, but are probably even better receivers. How do you see the Panthers using that as a 1-2 combo?
So there's 2 types of teams in this league and offensive coordinators. There's ones that have their scheme, and they will draft guys that fit their scheme. And there's the other philosophy. We're going to get the best players available, regardless of position, regardless of how they look, and we're going to try to build a scheme around them. McCaffrey, and you mentioned Samuel, those 2 guys are very versatile. They have a lot of similarities, but if you get them both on the field as a running back situation in the slot, it's a matchup nightmare. You look at all the man coverage that has to be played. They have Cam Newton as a quarterback. They've got Kelvin Benjamin on the outside, Olsen. It is going to be very, very difficult for teams to be able to match up with them in the NFC South, and I think they realized that back when New Orleans used to have Darren Sproles, and some nice tight end combinations there. It's a tough day for the safeties and linebackers.
And you mentioned those 2 philosophies. I know Ozzie Newsome was the man in the late 90s at best player available. You look at that run they had of Jamal Lewis, Ray Lewis, Ogden. Which do you agree with? Just take the best guy and say, hey, we'll find a way to play him?
Well, it's a lot easier to take the best guy when you have draft success. Because then you don't always have to need to fill holes. And I liked what Cincinnati did a couple years ago, taking 2 offensive tackles, really didn't need them. But now all of a sudden you can let guys walk away, and hopefully those guys are ready to fill in. The fortunate thing with Cleveland, with what they're able to do, is they need a lot of help. They need a lot of stuff to fill in, take the best player available, because you may not think you need that guy, but he may end up being a big, critical playmaker for you at some point in time, as opposed to maybe reaching for a guy that may be a position of need.
Noah Brown left Ohio State early. A lot of people criticizing that decision. He'll get a shot with the Dallas Cowboys. What does Noah Brown need to do to make sure he's on a roster in September?
Well, when you're a 7th round draft pick, you're going to have to make sure that you're going to come out and play some special teams. He's going to have to make sure he can solidify himself that way first. But Noah's a big physical possession receiver, not all that unlike Des Bryant. and maybe he doesn't have quite that much upside, but if you watch him go get the ball, you remember his Oklahoma performance, he just has to become more consistent with that. I think if he can develop a nice relationship with Dak Prescott, that could go a long way to helping him have success for the Cowboys.
I want to ask you about an undrafted free agent, Dontre Wilson, going to the now Los Angeles Chargers. Danny Woodhead no longer there. He went to the Ravens. The Chargers ran Melvin Gordon into the ground last year. They need someone to take the load off. Is there opportunity for Dontre?
There will be opportunity for Dontre, and he's a guy that's going to have a little bit of a situation like Curtis Samuel, where he's a little bit of a veteran guy, you know, as far as being able to move around from position to position. Played some H-back, played a little bit of running back, so he'll be a rookie, but they're going to expect him to know a lot. He's going to have to absorb a lot and be a vital part in the kick return game if he's going to want to make the team. Everyone has seen flashes here for 4 years, just probably not that consistent performance that you would have liked to have seen. So he has to take those flashes and turn them into consistency.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the Browns because they really were the story of this draft. Myles Garrett, #1. Are you good with that and not addressing quarterback?
I think it was the right pick. It was the safe pick, consensus kind of #1 overall guy. You never want to overreach for a position of need. And the problem is quarterbacks get overdrafted all the time.
It's true.
Not necessarily just because of them, but it's because they overvalue the position. You need to have a great quarterback, but just drafting one #1 overall doesn't make that guy a great player. They shored up the pass rush. They're able to get Kaiser later in the second round. They've got a litany of picks next year, so if Kaiser doesn't work out, they'll be able to move around and get the guy they want in the coming years.
And we talked earlier about passing on Malik Hooker at 12, trading down with the Texans. Can you take your scarlet glasses off and be objective with what kind of player they get in Jabril Peppers?
Jabril Peppers is a situation that's not all unlike Curtis Samuel. He's a very versatile guy, except it's on the defensive side of the ball now. Greg Williams, very aggressive scheme, likes to take guys and move them around. He did it when he was a part of the Rams with the Cardinals and now, or the Rams when first in St. Louis, now in LA. But he'll move him around. He'll play him at some linebacker. They'll play him at some nickel, play him back at deep safety, and really utilize all of his skill set. Because if you're just going to think you can line him up back there, play cover 2 safety, you're not really going to get the value that you wanted to with the 25th overall pick.
Quickly, last question here. John Ross, more than just a 4.22 guy for the Bengals?
I think he will develop into more than that. He's got a pretty good route tree. He does have some things to work on. Has a little bit of an injury history that questions you a little bit. But here's the best part. Usually when you take a wide receiver at #9, you're expecting that guy to be your ace.
That's true.
They already have A.J.
They've got
Green.
a guy.
They have Tyler Eifert.
That's true.
They're going to be in a situation now where they'll be able to have some success. They drafted Mixon. He's going to be probably the 3rd or 4th option who can fly down the field against single coverage. He will make some plays and score some touchdowns.
Well, Bobby, thanks a lot. Remember, you can always listen to Bobby weekdays, 97.1 The Fan, but you don't get to see the threads on the radio. Coming up next on Wall to Wall Sports,